Welcome to Wisco Dice. I am your host, the Conesy with the Most, and I am joined with all of these wonderful other hosts on the show.
Hey, it's Brian, sometimes Stark Raving Mad.
Hey, it's Justin, the Meeples champion.
And I'm Matt, the Ghost Walker.
And this is Suzanne.
And this is episode 104 of the Wisco Dice Tabletop Gaming Podcast. Woohoo! Today is January 25th, 2023, and on today's episode, we'll have interviews with JT from the Gamecrafters and Keith from Thunderworks Games. We'll have our hobby corner where we catch up on any miniature painting and hobby projects we've been working on. We're going to hit the news quick and hard, and first, let's roll into the games that we have been playing. And we'll go ahead and kick off this games we've been playing with a game called Castles of the Mad King Ludwig, the Royal Collector's Edition, which is a game that we just received from a Game Found project. Actually, I'd say just as received. We've had it for most of the summer, but we finally got it off the bar of shame and actually got it to the table. Castles of the Mad King Ludwig is a classic game, so this is a reprint and slight upgrade in the art and look of the game itself. It included a bunch of the expansions that had been previously printed in the game. Gameplay time is around 90 minutes, and it's published by Bezier Games. Plays 1 to 4, but actually with the expansion content in the Royal Collector's Edition box, you can get a 5th player in, which is really nice. In the game itself, each player starts with a simple foyer to their castle, and then during each game round, everybody's going to be doing stuff, but one player will take on the role of Master Builder, and that player takes all of the rooms and that are available for purchase and adding to your castle, and will set the price. So there's a price of maybe 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 and so on and so forth for each of these buildings, and then each other player outside of the Master Builder will have an opportunity to purchase one of those rooms. If they do so, they give the Master Builder the money for the purchase, and then at the end, the Master Builder gets to purchase a room. Of course, they could pass and collect money from the bank or whatnot, but the idea is that you're going to purchase these room tiles. They're various different shapes and sizes, and then you're going to add it to your castle. And when you do that, you gain castle points, which is the way you're going to win the game, is collecting these castle points. There's a little scoring track that goes around the game board provided in the Collector's Edition. And when the card deck that tells you which buildings to add runs out, the game comes to an end, and you determine who won by who had the most points. Of course, there's a lot of other little things that are going on in Castles of Mad King Ludwig, but at its core, it's an amazing tile-laying game that is a classic game. I've always had fun with it with the original printing. I think this version of it makes the game look just that much better on the table. It's got some really cool tower structures that you can then add to your castle, which I could take or leave those because I think it takes maybe a little bit away from the tile laying, but the rest of the game was a lot of fun and enjoyable. I think, Justin, you played the original version, if I'm not mistaken, and
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong there. And then Suzanne, you got to actually experience this for the first time with the Collector's Edition with me. What did you guys think about this game?
I like this game. The auction thing I think is really fun. And then for me, it's just like I enjoy tile-laying games, and I enjoy that you're just building this crazy castle. It just looks ridiculous by the end of the thing. You know, I was trying to listen and see if there's anything they really updated or changed in terms of, you know, balancing or gameplay or anything like that. It sounds like they just sort of included expansions and, you know, improved some art and stuff. No real big changes. I assume you played the original.
I played the original. It'd been so long since I had played the original that I really didn't notice anything from a gameplay balance mix, and I didn't play the original enough. I never owned a copy of it until now, so I didn't have anything to really hard compare compare it against the original game. But yeah, I would suspect I believe they did some things to kind of change up some game balance things and to make it a little bit different with some of the rooms. They've added some new rooms to the game as well, so there's that as well.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of variants now. I think in the collector's edition box, there's quite a bit to it, and there's a lot of expansion content. Like, we didn't play with the moats expansion, so there's an expansion that will let you actually build a moat around your castle as you're building your castle too, so that you can kind of, if you're really successful, you can build a full square moat around your castle, and that could be kind of neat and cool. And there's a lot of there's just a lot of things that you can just kind of explore with this one that maybe weren't in the base game itself of the old original.
Oh yeah, that sounds awesome. I gotta try this one.
And it's prettier. Like, I will say, hands down, this version is prettier.
That is one issue with the first one. It doesn't look. It's serviceable, but it's not. I mean, that's an older game. Doesn't have the looks.
At the time, it was great, right? And I think it was it looked pretty good, but yeah, I think it did not stand the test of time from a visual perspective. But this visual facelift of this classic game is definitely well needed, and it makes the game just have an amazing table presence now.
Well, I think that speaks to, though, what the current era of gaming is really transformed. I mean, I've seen some very simple games and simple art that work really well, but so many of them have just really upped their game, and they're just beautiful games with beautiful art. So, it's nice to see that evolution, that they're taking some of the old classics and updating them with that improved art.
Yeah, I think it's generally a good trend. Like, I definitely appreciate good art in a game, and glad that others do too.
So where Boone Lake was long, this game is short. Like, it feels very short. Even though we have this nice collector's edition that has components in it to aid with setup, it still takes a bit of time to set it up. About as much time as it feels to play a game. So I feel like this is a game that if you take the time to set it up, you need to play it more than once. It's still fun. I definitely want to play it with more than 2 players, and I want to add some of the expansions in. I just want to see what they are going to add to it. It is a pretty game, like everyone said. It's a very quick game, and I got frustrated because there are things I wanted to do, but there's no time to do them. So there's very little planning I felt I could do with the game.
This is a tricky game for 2 players too. I mean, the way that maybe they changed how the auctioning works, but I remember that being a little bit clunky for 2 players. Is that your experience?
Oh, you pretty much know what the other person's going to want after a round or 2, and you set it, or you know how much money they have. And so, if you have more money, you can just easily set it higher, and there's no worry about it, or set stuff that you don't want them to have out of their price range. Super easy because there's only one other player to be, checking out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there was some of that, but then at the same time there was, oh, well, I'm glad you put that into a price point that only you could afford. I'll just take money from the bank this round and not buy anything, and now you're stuck paying that more expensive price. Thank you, Master Builder, for putting that out of my price point. You get no money now. Kind of that was happening. So I think there's some tactical play at 2 players, but yes, I think this is a game that still shines better at 3 or 4 players, or even the adding in the 5th player option.
Yeah, we had several rounds where neither of us could afford. We had no money, so neither of us could afford to buy anything. So it was like, all right, well, that's just a round of getting money. So that I'm guessing in a 3 or 4 player game, there's more likely someone is going to have the $2,000 to buy a building, and there are cheaper buildings the more players you have.
I will add that I think this version of it, while it is pretty, and I really like a lot of the things that they've done with this game to enhance the table presence, I do feel like there are a number of things in the game that it wasn't really necessary to add to what was previously a pretty quick and easy tile laying game to set up and play and then re-rack it and set it up and play again. So there is a bit of that. I do feel like maybe they felt like they just had to, like, it's a bigger box for a game that you're like, ooh, I'm gonna get this big game experience, and then you play it and you're done. You for a 2-player game, you're done in 45 minutes. I think that was maybe a little bit of what you're kind of talking about, Suzanne, in the, oh, hey, it felt almost like a letdown for the amount of setup and whatnot that you're doing, and then all of a sudden you're, oh, hey, we're done with the game. What do you mean I'm done? I need to do these 3. I don't feel like I feel like I have more to do or more to keep going on the game, but the game's over and you're like, I'm just getting going with it. It's only been a half an hour at the table or whatever, right?
I guess that's the trade-off with the deluxeified version. Like, it looks like a bigger game than it is. Yeah.
I still love Castles of Mad King Ludwig. It definitely does that perfectly, and it has all of the extra parts and pieces built into the box. So, plus some new expansion content. Don't ask me what that new expansion content is because I wasn't familiar with the expansions that were released previously for the game. If you're a big fan of tile layers and the original version of Castle of Mad King Ludwig, by all means, go out and get this. But otherwise, I think you can find Castle of the Mad King Ludwig, the original, out there. If you're interested in a nice tile layer, you can probably get a used copy of that for a much more reasonable price. I definitely recommend in either version you try out Castles of Mad King Ludwig.
All right. For the next game that we've been playing, several of us have had a chance, and it is an oldie but a goodie at this point, which is Gloomhaven. I know many of you are probably eagerly waiting for your shipment of Frosthaven, but now is a great time to really wrap up your Gloomhaven campaign that you've been nursing for a while. So Gloomhaven is published by Cellofair Games. Playtime is somewhere between 60 to 120 minutes per scenario, and you really can support 1 to 4 players. So on our side, the people that have really played this quite a bit, at least recently, is Ben, Suzanne, and myself, though not together. Gloomhaven is a very tactical game. It is one of those games that has a very big, intimidating box, and it is infamous for needing a lot of organizers just to make it so that you can put the game out in a reasonable time frame. So the basis of the game is really you are mercenaries in the town of Gloomhaven, and you're here to follow this epic story of what happens in Gloomhaven and decide as the story progresses with a little bit of a pick your own adventure style game where every scenario you do, some of them are main story, but you get to also follow side quests and develop your characters by way of picking new cards and adding new features to your character as you grow them. So the game basically plays out with strategic scenarios, which have basically really well-written backgrounds as to what's going on in the game and how what's going on in that particular scenario, and a layout which adapts itself for the number of players you have. So, even if you're a 1 player, you always play at least 2 characters. So it's balanced between 2 and 4 characters basically in the game. And it gives you the opportunity to go through the scenario, and you start each scenario with a deck of cards. And the deck of cards and how many you have is really dependent upon your character. And each character has basically cards that specify what they do. And each card is divided into a top and a bottom. And you select 1 top and 1 bottom to play, and you pick the order. And then the monsters are driven by their own monster decks that automatically occur. So there's a set of rules that occur with the monsters, but the idea is you go through the scenario and you try to achieve the objectives in the scenario with your characters. And there may be other special things that occur during the scenarios. There may be loot chests that you could try to find if you can, or extra little things that you can do. And in between, either when you're traveling to get to a dungeon or you're sitting around town, there are other special events that occur where you're basically interacting with the world around you, and you may do things that will help the city or hurt the city. And it really gives you that opportunity of whether you want to play the good guys or the bad guys. And sometimes there are, frankly, no good decisions to be had when you're picking a solution. So this is, like I said, this can be a very large, intimidating game for many people. It's not really designed to be played in one setting, though it is, if you can get a group of people together for, say, several days to play this, you can make a lot of progress. But it's definitely more of that style of game. You're going to want to build a campaign where you're going to need a dedicated group of people that can come semi-regularly and sit down and do it. Or, like I said, because it can support 2 people, if you and your spouse or your significant other love playing games together that are cooperative and it's you against the board, this is another game that you could definitely do something like that. And you can do a lot of interactions where you support each other, but you don't necessarily know what the other person's going to play. It's definitely one of those things you have to have a good bit of time and space to set up. It is a time-consuming game to set up. It has a lot of components to it. But it also, and I'm going to say this because it's one of the ways I've played this extensively, is there is an actually really good version of this game, a digital version of this game as well. So if you struggle or you'd love to do this with a friend of yours who lives in another state, but you just can't, get together regularly, there is a digital version available on both Steam and the Epic Games Store that it works really well with multiple players. I played a campaign all the way through on that digital version of this and Jaws of the Lion, which is one of the expansions. There's multiple expansions for this game. It's definitely a very strategic game where you don't always make the right decisions, and it has a great flavor for how you develop the town and how you kind of build things out. So, Ben, Suzanne, what did I miss? There's so much to this game.
I'm not sure that you missed anything too dramatic. I mean, it's Gloomhaven, and if you haven't heard of Gloomhaven at this point, and you're in the board game world, you're probably living under a rock. That said, I think there's a lot of people out there that haven't tried or haven't decided to get into Gloomhaven because the box is so massive. Jaws of the Lion, one of the expansions for Gloomhaven, really does make it much more viable for someone to check it out and get it in a more of a smaller form factor that's a little more straightforward and teaches you how to play the game. And boy, I kind of wish Jaws of the Lion was out before I bought Gloomhaven, because it would have been nice to kind of walk through a little bit better. This is how you play the game and you grow your characters, and also maybe I decide not to get Gloomhaven after all. I love Gloomhaven. It's a great game, but there is a lot of content in this game. There are 100 scenarios in the base box. So that's a lot of gameplays, and if you don't succeed at a scenario,
back up and try again.
Yep, you just re-rack it and go again. And when you're playing in campaign mode, that means that, there's 100 scenarios. You're probably going to end up with 120, 140, 150, maybe even 200 plays of Gloomhaven. That is a lot of hours and a lot of commitment for any game group. And that's why when I said, I might have actually backed out and just did Jaws of the Lion and said, hey, that was good. I understand the Gloomhaven experience, because it's a smaller thing that's much more manageable and be able to be chewed off. That said, Suzanne and I are massively trying to bang out as much Gloomhaven as we can before our copy of Frosthaven shows up, because that will be another 100+ scenarios that we need to try to work through. If you're looking at Gloomhaven, yes, I think the online version is probably the app version of it that came out later is probably the easiest way to maintain and do this with a group. If you have an amazing board game group or a couple individuals that are absolutely insanely committed to playing the same game over and over and over, a lot of times in a reasonably short amount of time, you could bang out a Gloomhaven campaign and not too bad. Of course, if you also choose to try to drive more towards the main story arc and not explore every little bit and morsel that a Gloomhaven has to give you, you can probably get through it in a much more reasonable campaign time too. But I think,
Yeah.
Suzanne, we're exploring every nook and cranny of that game, aren't we?
Pretty much. And some of it's because we go fail a scenario, replay the scenario, and just don't want to be slaughtered a third time. So we back up and go a different way. And I think that's one of the things you have to be okay with before you start this campaign, is that you may not be able to pass every scenario, and you may have some devastating defeats no matter what you do and how good your characters are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one thing I don't think Ben or Matt mentioned, was that you start off with your character, you build them up, you level them up, and then you get to a point where you get to retire them and start a new character. Now, that new character does not start down at level 1. It starts at, kind of a midway point between where your old one was and, 0, and based on where you guys are in the game and everything. And that is keeping me very much engaged in the game, is that I've retired a character, I'm getting close to retiring another one. So it's changing it up by getting to play a different character with a different play style.
Mm-hmm.
And see how that goes. So that's, I really do enjoy Gloomhaven. I really love the aspect of being able to change my characters throughout the game too.
I think that's a very important mechanic too, Suzanne. I didn't want to give people the impression you have one character through the whole thing. The retirement is fascinating. It keeps the game fresh. And if you're not enjoying a character, it gives you an opportunity to build towards something to get you something else you might enjoy better. So,
yeah, I want to pipe in just real quick and second the idea of checking out Jaws of the Lion. So I've played Jaws of the Lion and a tiny bit of Gloomhaven, but for me, it is way too much of a commitment to do the full Gloomhaven thing. A couple people you had said that Jaws of the Lion is an expansion. It is a fully complete game on its own. It uses the Gloomhaven mechanics, and like they said, it teaches you the game, but it is its own full game experience. It's not an expansion. You don't have to have Gloomhaven to play Jaws of the Lion. It's its own game. And it's actually at a much more reasonable price point if that's something that is an issue for you for Gloomhaven. And so I think if, it's perfect for someone who might be intimidated by the price or size or commitment of Gloomhaven, who's looking for that experience. It is a complete game, and I would definitely recommend it, as you guys did too.
I did mention as an expansion, you can carry your Jaws of the Lion campaign characters and party into the Gloomhaven campaign.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
It's sort of a precursor. It technically occurs before Gloomhaven, but I will say my first tabletop experience with Gloomhaven was Jaws of the Lion. A friend of mine from Texas had us down for a week. And yes, I know most people can't dedicate a full week, but I think it took us playing it all day, about 4 or 5 days to work through the whole campaign. And we were not getting up at 8 and playing till midnight. We're all older. Sorry, we just don't move that quick. But it was a really good time. And it was definitely, like you guys said, it was much more of a better introduction for me, who'd never been in the Gloomhaven universe. Because I was always the same way. I had young kids earlier in my life, and I always stared at Gloomhaven just when it's just so expensive. It's always on sale anymore. But Jaws of the Lion is a great, like you said, standalone introduction to Gloomhaven that you could really make a decision on that universe without having to be like, I spent $150 on the base game and I got $80 in organizers and all sorts of other stuff. So yeah, definitely a game that you can get hours and hours and hours worth of entertainment out of that doesn't require, but it does take a lot of dedication from a group. Even Jaws the Lion, you've got to expect you're going to be playing for probably a solid 40 hours worth of gameplay probably.
Yeah, there's still a ton of game in that, honestly.
Oh yeah, it's not a small one, and it definitely has its own branching campaign. So there's a lot of great content in there as well.
Yeah, we're probably 20 or 30% of the way through the content, so we got a lot of gameplay to go there. So it'll be interesting to see just how close or how far we can get through it before we actually are able to say, hey, we actually feel like we're done and we're ready to move on to Frosthaven. All right, so if you are interested in any of these games, you think they're cool, obviously Gloomhaven's the big one that the first time I think we really talked about on this show. Make sure you head over to wiscodice.com and check out the links for any of these games, as well as pictures and other thoughts in our show notes for this episode. Next up, let's go ahead and roll right into the gaming news.
All right. So first up with the gaming news this month is the hottest news around is that Wisco Dice has launched our YouTube channel. So our first video launch for a monthly series is up, and we're reviewing 3 games in 15 minutes for you. We'll be releasing videos weekly via this channel. So please head on over, check out the Wisco Dice YouTube, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Heads up to all our fellow Madisonians. The next Wisco Dice board game night at Misty Mountain Games will be on February 24th. Games start at 6 p.m. and we welcome all comers. Play a game from the Wisco Dice Tabletop Gaming Library or bring your own. We'd love to see you there.
Also worth noting, the Gen Con badges are now up for sale. Expect to see members of the Wisco Dice Tabletop Gaming Podcast at the show. Of course, we'd love to meet some of you, and we'll have swag to give out. Feel free to catch us at the show and say hello.
Right, and similar to that, the next big convention Wisco Dice will be Adepticon. I know myself and Conzi are planning to be there. I think, Ben, you already signed up for Batman on Thursday and Friday. I'll probably at least do Batman on Friday. Then I guess Saturday is looking pretty open for us right now. If you're interested in catching a game while we're at the show, please reach out and we'll see if we can make it happen.
We've also got some crowdfunding news to share. Just one Kickstarter that caught my eye recently is Manhattan Project War Machine. This is a game in a line of other Manhattan Project games, starting with Manhattan Project and then Manhattan Project Energy Empire, both of which are games I played and enjoyed. So this is the newest in that line. The Kickstarter is $35. It's already been funded, so good signs there. A little bit different than the previous games. There's a very sort of stylistic propaganda poster art style. And I mentioned that just because it differs so much from the previous games. It might be somewhat of a change for, people who are used to the art style of the other 2 games. Gameplay wise, it's a dice worker placement game with engine building. And I think just because of the pedigree of its other games in the series, it's worth keeping an eye on. Manhattan Project War Machine.
And next up with the Kickstarter projects that caught our eyes is Puzzle Cube Dice by Phone Brain Games. And I love Phone Brain dice to look at. I think it's really cool how they have different inclusions in a lot of their dice. But this is something different. These are dice and other gaming accessories for you with a puzzle theme. So if you love puzzles and love games, this is a great marriage of the 2 of them.
And one other Kickstarter I'd like to highlight is Fork, F-O-R-K, which stands for Fox, Owl, Rabbit, Kale. This is a Kickstarter that we will be launching on the 30th of January, and we received a review copy of this, actually, So keep an eye out for our review of this game in the next few days or so. Fork is a family-friendly trick-taking game. It's a quick to learn, easy to play, and has unexpected depth to it, honestly. Keep an eye out for that review, and back Fork if it sounds like it's something for you.
All right, and that gets us through the news. If you have anything that you think we missed, please let us know at hosts@wiscodice.com. You can just email that in, and we'll make sure that we include it or mention it in the news the next time we have an episode. But with that, let's go ahead and roll right into our hobby corner.
All right. So, hobby corner for me this month is more work on my Malifaux models. Those of you that have been listening for a few months know that I am slowly getting into the world of Malifaux and learning to put together and paint models. So, I'm up now to basing them. Big step for me. I have come up with a base design with the help of Conesy and gotten that started. And hopefully next month I'll have some previews on the painting that I've started on. But question for everyone out there, or for those other hosts on this show right now, with your basing, how do you approach basing for your crews? Do you keep everything like the same theme for every model, or do you just kind of change it up based on how you're feeling when you look at the model?
Oh, I will go ahead and jump in real quick, and then Brian, I'd be fascinated to hear your thoughts, because I think they've evolved a little bit from our old Warhammer days, where you were very focused on having a unified, cohesive look for every model with the way it was based, and oftentimes even painted so that it was looked like it was all parts and members of a greater army. But these days, there's a little more flex, particularly with games like Malifaux, where you may end up with models that you don't really maybe want to buy the same model twice and build and paint the same model twice, but that model might service in, say, a Resurrectionist crew, and then be able to service in a Neverborn crew, and maybe you had basing schemes that were different for both crews. So how do you try to approach that? And I think the biggest thing that I would say to advise is try to kind of merge where those models come together. So maybe if you had like the Halloween creepy garden, which I do for my Neverborn actually in Malifaux, and then I have kind of a graveyard basing scheme for my Resurrectionists. I try to, if I have models that cross, try to find a way to include those two basing schemas. So maybe have a graveyard with a pumpkin on the base and then the miniature mounted to it or something like that. That way the whole crew has this kind of cool, cohesive story with the way they're modeled and presented from an appearance perspective, and all look like they fit together. But Brian, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because this is something that you're probably starting to experience as well, having models across different crews.
Yeah, I think I've actually kind of avoided or haven't made a decision myself on how to do that. I still definitely think about like the cohesion of a crew. Like Batman has a lot of opportunities for those same kind of, models that can work in a few different crews. Most of my crews, like I'll do them all the same, but I haven't really done one yet that I expect to play in more than one crew. But I know I've kind of locked some of my models into like matching my certain crew. Like I did my league pretty unique with kind of like a more of a desert themed base. And since I was playing Deadshot with that crew, like I ended up making him with that base. And now he's kind of locked into that. So like if I want to include that Deadshot with any other crews, like he's going to be really out of place. I'm going to have to like kind of change up and get a different model for him or something like that. Generally, I always try to make everything cohesive, but with cross models, it kind of becomes an issue then, depending on what you're doing for basing. Yeah, it actually ties into my hobby projects lately. I think I mentioned it whatever our last hobby corner might have been, but I had acquired a Watchmen crew of the old metal models to play, and one of my hangups on them is I'm not exactly sure how I want to base them, so I actually haven't really whatever, clean them up or put them on bases yet because I was trying to figure that out. But they're kind of waiting in the wings. I did finally get some hobby mojo back at the beginning of this new year now. Recently, we've been playing the league play at whatever weekly for the last few weeks for Batman. And to get more points for that, I was trying to keep back to playing all painted crews. So it's kind of short on some models I wanted to use in my Bane crew. So I'd switch back to league for a bit, but I finally had some motivation to then paint up. I finished the militia model for the Soldiers of Fortune. So she made it out to game night this week. And then I kind of kept my mojo going. And now I'm working on the actual kind of the regular Bane. I had the Dark Knight Rises Bane is what I've been playing. So now I'm trying to finish the Bane from like the Overdrive box, kind of your regular comic book Bane to do next. So that's what I've been doing for hobby projects lately.
I've taken on a fairly big project for myself, and that is that I'm starting to paint the exosuit miniatures for a board game called Anachrony. Anachrony is a worker placement time traveling game, and one of the aspects of the game is that some of the actions you take, you have to put your worker inside a giant mech suit to send them out into the wasteland to take advantage of things that are out there in the dangerous wasteland. They have to go out in these big mech suits. So there's a set of miniatures you can buy that you can include in the game, just for fun, basically. And actually, also, I should mention, it's published by Mindclass Games. But in the game, there are 4 different factions that you can play, and each of them have 6 chunky exosuit miniatures. So I've started on all those. I've actually gotten nearly complete, maybe 80-90% on 2 of the factions. One of them is called the Path of Salvation faction. And they have this big chunky suit with one arm that's a big old drill, and the other's like this big sort of robot-looking grasper claw. And then the other one is actually a miniature I mentioned way back on one of the first episodes that I was in, which is the Path of Dominance. They have this sort of octopus-like exosuit with a smooth sort of squid head and these 4 big old tentacle arms coming out of it, sort of like like a Doc Ock style tentacle arm. Yeah, so I'm maybe 90% done with both of the sets of those 6, and then I've got 2 more to do to finish the game, and I've sort of set the goal for myself that I'm gonna have these finished in time for Cabin Con. So I think setting that deadline has helped me stay motivated to keep working on them. Definitely a big project for me, because this is like the most minis I've ever painted at one time. So it's a new thing to me.
I will say that one of the best things for motivation that you could possibly have in the world of miniature painting is a deadline. There's nothing like a tournament or an event to really push yourself to getting things done. Isn't that right, Brian?
Yep, that's how you get stuff done.
So just participate in more events and force yourself to take new models to those events, and you'll get stuff done. My hobby project has been more 3D printing. So even though my Ender 3 has been a little bit fussy lately with getting plastic to feed through it, I have been able to conquer most of the mechanical challenges, and I've been printing off a bunch of STLs that I purchased from Corvus Games Terrain that are from their Modern Terrain collection. These pieces will be great for the Batman miniature game. They'll be great for Crisis Protocol. Basically anything that I need to set up city streets for. Overall, I think the prints have turned out really nice. I think they look really cool. I will note, and I didn't realize this when I purchased the STLs, is that the buildings are all kind of undersized. Like their scale, like the doors and windows are to scale, but the buildings themselves are very small. And in contrast to, like, say, what they should be in real life. Like, for example, I've got like one building that's a comic shop that I printed, and it's maybe a 6-inch by 6-inch building. And if I put, like, say, the Hulk miniature from Crisis Protocol next to it, he looks almost as big as the building just from a sheer volume size. So it doesn't look quite visually proportionate in my mind when I look at these buildings. But from a game function, I think the design is really for game functionality, which I think the small little undersized buildings are probably really much better for game functionality. And of course, having them a little undersized makes them easier to make sure that anybody who has a 3D printer can fit them on the print bed for any of their FDM printers that are out there. With that, we'll go ahead and make sure that we get pictures of all of these projects up on our website at whiskodice.com so that you can check them out and see all of this hobby goodness that we've been working on. But from here, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk to JT from the Gamecrafters, and then talk to Keith from Thunderworks. Hey folks, this is the Conesy with the Most. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about Misty Mountain Games here in Madison, Wisconsin, where you can find CCGs, RPGs, board games, minis, paint and hobby supplies for all of your tabletop gaming experience and needs. If you can't find it online, give them a phone call or swing on by their brick and mortar store here on the east side of Madison. Don't worry, that is mistymountaingames.com. Check them out today.
All right, and we are back from break, and we are now joined by JT from the Gamecrafter. Welcome, JT.
Hello, it's good to be here.
Do you want to introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about what the Gamecrafter is?
Sure. My name's JT, JT Smith, if you want the full name. The Gamecraft, and I'm one of the owners of the Gamecrafter. The Gamecrafter is a print-on-demand service where you can design your own game and get real printed copies. You can basically design your artwork, upload it to our website. We've got templates to help you format everything. And then you can choose out little pieces that you might want in, dice or pawns, that sort of thing. We can make everything from cards to boxes, boards, booklets, mats, dials, anything. Basically, you upload that stuff to our website. A little over a week later, you'll get a copy in the mail. And if you like it, you can also sell it on our website. We handle a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And we aren't going to even cover a tiny fraction of them tonight as we talk.
Well, that sounds wonderful. I mean, if no one has ventured out to the Gamecrafter website, I will definitely put a link in our show notes for them. But it is just amazing what different options you have for game designers alone for what different types of pieces they want and the sizes they want. And then you said they can sell it too. Yeah. So how does that work?
Well, basically, we have an online shop, like Amazon or whatever. You can go to thegamecrafter.com/games if you're searching for games. And we have shops for different categories as well. So like tarot or upgrades to your favorite games or game pieces, that sort of thing. But anyway, you can publish your game to our shop. And how it works is that when a copy gets sold, we will manufacture it, ship it out to the end customer. And you don't have to do a thing. All you do is collect a royalty, and you set that royalty. We tell you how much the game costs, and you set the price. So you get to choose what your royalty is, and we pay that out via PayPal sometime later. And so, it's a really simple thing if you've got a game that you want to sell. And of course, we're not doing the marketing aspect of it, so we're not your publisher. We're just a retailer for you. But yeah, we can handle all that and make it problem-free for you.
Makes it sound really desirable to create a game and get it out there for people to see and try it out. So the game designer still is responsible for doing all the marketing, and They just direct people to your website to actually have it printed. So there's no, hey, I'm going to pay for it and wait 6 months. Like with the crowdfunding options.
Well, we do actually have a crowdfunding option too that we could talk about later if you like. But for the web sales, It's just, you're like, let's say you belong to you're making a game about horses, and you belong to a Facebook group about horses, or a newsletter, email newsletter about horses, that sort of thing. You will market your game to, the audience that you have access to, whether that be the fandom of a comic book that you're writing, or whatever it is. And then, people come out and they can purchase it off of our website. That's not to say you won't get sales from our website naturally. We have lots of shoppers buying games on there, thousands of them a week. But, finding your game among the sea of other games that exist there is challenging. So that's why your own marketing really comes into play to help people find that game. Now, of course, if going back to that example, if you're making a game about horses, they can go to the search engine and type in horses and maybe find your particular game. But they may not know to search for horses because, they're not fans of horses, or they're thinking of something else when they come to the website. Anyway, so the point is, it is a regular e-commerce website like Etsy or Amazon or even eBay for that matter. And we do all the retail sales and just pay you at the end. Now, crowdfunding, we actually have a thing called crowd sales, which work a lot like Kickstarter or any other crowdfunding platform that you're aware of. And in that, you basically will create a campaign on our website. And again, we will market it to our social media and the front page of our website and that sort of stuff while your sale is running. But again, you should bring your own crowd. That's the nature of crowdfunding. And what happens is you'll set a duration for the sale, and you will set what you want the price to be. And the difference here between Kickstarter and us is, first of all, everybody who backs a copy is going to get a copy regardless. There is no tilt at the end where, you have to hit this many before it'll sell. Everybody that backs will get a copy. The difference is that the more people that back, the cheaper it becomes for everybody. So we charge credit cards at the end of the sale, even though you pledge anytime you want during the sale. And so every 10 copies that you sell during your crowd sale, the price goes down by a little bit. And so you could get, 50% off by the end of the sale if you get enough people backing your crowd sale. So anyway, sorry, I went on a little long there, but
No, that's just fine. I was very interested in hearing how your crowdfunding option is different than like Kickstarter or GameFound. That reduction in price, that's very attractive, at least, especially to me, because then I feel like I won at the end. It's that thrill of the hunt that people find with shopping.
It makes it interesting for the designer as well, because a lot of times when you're doing a Kickstarter, you've designed your game and you have to come up with some crazy extra stretch goals, and it might be swag like t-shirts and stuff like that. It might be that you come out with a game mat. It might be that you add extra content to the game. But the problem is that that's stressful. So you're either going to break up the game into pieces that you don't want to break up so that you have these stretch goals, or you have to add content that may make the game worse. So with us, there are no stretch goals. It's simply you get those pricing tiers. So you build the best game possible, and then you sell it for a discounted rate. And I think it works out better for everybody that way.
Sounds really attractive. And as a purchaser, as a buyer, then I am knowing the maximum that I'm going to pay going in instead of a minimum where, add-ons and everything else that you can't miss out on.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, you'll know the maximum right at the end.
Yep, that's really awesome. So it sounds like your company has a couple different ways to get games into the hands of players that can be cost effective and are pretty quick, and you can get a new game. Indeed. So how did you get into the hobby of tabletop gaming?
I mean, I grew up in a household that played tabletop games, but it was more of your Hasbro style games, Risk, Monopoly, that sort of thing. Also a lot of card games, trick-taking games like Euchre and Dirty Clubs and things like that. And so it was natural for me to progress into other games as opportunities arose. So in high school, I ran into somebody, I made a friend that was into role-playing games, and so I got to start playing those. And then in college, I started playing even more role-playing games and board games, and then I decided I wanted to design my own stuff. You know, I'd been playing enough games where I'm like, oh, I could come up with something cool. And so I actually published an RPG called Dead Earth when I was in college. And then I started designing my own board games and did that for, you know, probably 10 years or so. But the problem was that I hated the crafting aspect of board game design. You know, you're printing out cards on your home printer, and like back then I was using an inkjet printer, which, you know, the ink costs the same as unicorn blood.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And then, you know, having to use the guillotine cutter to, you know, kind of cut out your cards and sleeve them and all that kind of stuff. It was such a pain. So I went looking for somebody that could do that, and I didn't find anybody. So, you know, I was looking for a company that could make these cards for me, so I didn't have to do the crafting part of board game design. And so I started looking, and I found Husks. I found 8 different companies who came and tried to do it and went out of business doing it.
Okay.
And so that was kind of the inspiration for getting into, you know, actually starting this. But anyway, I went a little long-winded there again. I told you my whole evolution there. So
I am happy to sit back and listen, because to me this is really fascinating, just how you've progressed and got into this point. So you found companies that went out of business and said, hey, all these companies went out of business. I think it'd be a good idea for me to try doing what they were doing. You know, that's an interesting way to get motivated. Clearly you've been very successful, and you've been in this business for quite a while.
Yeah, so I'll explain myself a little bit there. So I've been building businesses my whole adult life. I started my first business when I was 18, and you know, at this point I'm in the high 20s worth of businesses that I've created. I don't even know what the number is. But so when I saw that all these businesses went out of business, I looked to figure out why, what caused them to go out of business. And I found a very common theme. They all tried to treat print on demand like long run printing. So, for example, they would have a customer format their own stuff for press, you know, try to have them format sheets for printer, which takes a lot of customer service, because the customer doesn't know necessarily what a press sheet is or how to create a PDF or any of that kind of stuff, let alone to lay it out correctly so that it will print and cut and all of that kind of stuff. So this whole ingestion phase of getting the files from the customer was killing people, because they couldn't charge enough for the print, and the, you know, ingestion thing was taking up a lot of human time. So that's what was putting them out of business. So I decided, as a developer, software developer, I decided I could automate that with a little bit of software, and that's why I've been successful. It's creating automation.
That's a good way to improve on a lot of businesses, is automating stuff. So that sounds like you've hit it. You know, you figured out the magical combination to make this successful. So you did also mention that you have been trying to design some games on your own. Have you published any of your games with Gamecrafter?
Yeah, I've published, I don't know, 10 or so on the Gamecrafter. I've made a couple hundred games at this point, but I'm really hard on myself. I don't like most of my games. You know, if it's not really good, I don't want to publish it. And also, I don't really find the publishing part of board games to be very fun. I love the design challenge, but then like all of the refinements that you have to do at the end with, you know, making videos and all of that stuff isn't as fun to me. So I do it very infrequently, but I've done a bunch of them. The most famous one probably that I published to the Gamecrafter is called The Captain is Dead. It is a co-op game where basically it's the last 10 minutes of your favorite sci-fi series, you know, Star Trek or something of that nature, where things have gone horribly wrong and the captain dies, and then the remaining crew have to work together and get themselves out of a bad situation. And so I did that. on the Gamecrafter. I ran a Kickstarter for it and fulfilled the Kickstarter through a Gamecrafter. And, between website sales and Kickstarter, I sold about 4,000 copies of it on the website. And then AEG came along and wanted to publish it. And so now it's, been out in retail for a number of years, and it's, I don't know, probably another 20 or 30,000. I have no idea how many copies they've sold, but lots. So
yeah, that is actually, not knowing that it was yours. That is one that I've had my eye on off and on for a number of years. And then I saw it on your website and I was like, wow, I didn't realize you guys did the Captain is Dead. And so now I'm going to have to definitely take time to check it out even further and maybe decide to finally take the plunge and purchase it. So
we'll have to get together and play sometime.
That would be awesome, because I love that sci-fi type theme that you have, or space theme. Like, oh my gosh. So definitely going to have to do that. And so you've talked a lot about this overview of the process for game creation. Do designers use this as a way to get prototypes for their games, or is this just supposed to be for like a finished game, your process?
Oh no, prototypes are a big part of what we do. It's not the largest area of what we do, but it is a big section of what we do. So a lot of people will, just get a deck of cards printed, or, not like a complete game. They'll get a board or whatever it is that they don't want to make at home. And sometimes people will do complete prototypes. Like, I hate the crafting process, for example, and there's a lot of people out there that are like me. So none of the prototyping do they do at home. They do it entirely through the Gamecrafter. But there are a lot of people that do like the crafting process, and so they'll do some of the stuff at home. But then when there are hard things to do well at home, like making hexes is a really hard thing to do, like hex tiles or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing that people will come to the Gamecrafter, because we can make that, with all of our machinery and stuff, way easier than you can with like an X-Acto knife or something at home.
Okay, so that's really cool. So that it gives them an easier way, like you said, for those that don't enjoy the crafting part but really want to get this game going. All right, so we've gone over the process for game creation and kind of how a publisher gets their game published through your site. It's a lot of you assisting them and with the publishing portion of it while they do the marketing and promoting of their game. And then people get their games when they purchase it. How long does it take?
Well, we publish a real-time queue on our website, so people can go, if you go to thegamecrafter.com/status, you can actually see what our queue looks like at any given time. It's all first in, first out, which means the person that ordered first gets their thing first, and that sort of thing. But depending on the time of year, it'll take a week, 2, 3. Like if we're at Christmas or during the peak of convention season, like right before Gen Con, it could take several weeks to get your game. But most of the time, we're trying to keep it around a week that it takes to get your game. But we'll always give you a live estimate right at the time of order, and we'll keep updating that estimate as time goes on, while you're waiting too, so that you're getting the most accurate information that we can give you while you're waiting.
Kind of a fun way for the buyers to see and follow along in the process a little bit too, then, right? Like,
yeah,
with other
absolutely.
crowdfunding, you get those status updates. With this, you get to just go in and check. It's like a really slow pizza delivery. Like, Pizza Hut has their tracker and everything.
Yeah, I wish we could pull off 30 minutes or less. That would be amazing. But when you've got several thousand games in the queue, it's just not possible. Although
right.
we do actually have an urgent, now that you bring that up, we have an urgent ordering process where you can, at checkout, you kind of are like, I need this right now. And so you can click that at checkout and pay a little extra, and you'll get right at the front of the queue then. So basically you'll get the game will leave our office or our factory basically a day after you order it. So
wow.
then it's just up to how long it takes to ship it to you based on what shipping you chose. So.
Oh, that's cool. So you can pay to cut in line.
That's right.
That's it. You learn that in school. You give someone candy, they let you stand in line in front of them. Do you ship internationally, or is it just domestically?
Yeah, we ship to not every country in the world, but almost. It's like 189 countries or something like that. So
Okay. Well, that's
yeah,
cool. So
yeah.
that's a lot to have to also manage when you're shipping internationally with the different regulations and countries. So,
Oh yeah, it's quite challenging. And especially during with COVID and everything, there's a lot of countries that, accept mail and then they stop accepting mail and then they accept mail again.
right.
It's been
And there's,
crazy the last few years.
well, and in the UK, they just had Royal Mail just went on strike for a few weeks. So, I mean, you
Yeah,
got to deal
yep,
with that too. And
absolutely. The other thing that we do, since we're talking about shipping and that sort of thing, we have this system that we call a BOF, or bulk order fulfillment. So you basically upload your spreadsheet to our website of addresses that you want to ship your copies of your game to, and we'll produce them and then ship them out. And a lot of times that's a lot of international orders. So we're shipping to 20 different countries for it's one copy of a game or two copies of a game to 300 addresses, that sort of thing. And so but we get to take some of that nightmare out of the hands of the person that wants to ship those things. They don't have to worry about like you said, the mail strike that's happening in Great Britain, or the war in Ukraine, or whatever else happens to be going on at the time that they deal with that. If the package gets lost in the mail because Brazil has a terrible shipping system, which it does, by the way, then we will make a new copy and ship it out, and they don't have to worry about the fact that, something bad happened. So
that's really nice. That is a very nice for peace of mind for these publishers too, that
right.
that's not something they need to deal with and everything. Now, you're helping out these game designers quite a lot. Do you have much interaction with them throughout the process?
We actually have very little interaction during the publishing process unless they need help. I mean, they can email us at any time, and we've got a great customer service team who will help them through any issues that they have. We actually have a service called Concierge where they can pay us to actually make their files and things like that if they don't have the skills. So we have a lot of different ways that we can help people through that process if they need it. But the vast majority of our customers are kind of self-serve. So the primary way that we interact with most of them is actually either at conventions. We go to a lot of them and we sponsor a lot. I think close to 100 different conventions that we either attend or sponsor per year. Plus, we have all kinds of like community contests and social media interaction. Like we have a Discord server just like you do. So lots of different things that we do to try to interact with our customers, because we don't have to interact with them in the ordering process usually.
Sure. Well, that sounds nice. It sounds like a nice way to get to know them, and them to also get to know you as a company, and not just here, give me this type of
Right. Yeah.
relationship. So very
Yeah.
fun. That sounds great. I guess my last question for you is pretty simple. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners, or anything else that I didn't ask you about that you really want to talk about?
Man, I mean,
I'm
I
leaving
don't
it
want to
wide
bore
open
people.
for you. Oh,
Yeah, I
if
don't
they've
want to bore
gotten this
people,
far,
but
they're not going to get bored.
there are literally hundreds of things that we could talk about. If you're interested in game design, you probably already know who we are. If you don't, I hope you've gotten a nice little introduction to what we can do. But really, get involved in the community, because you will learn just how wide the scope of the Gamecrafter gets when you get in there, with all of the different things that we can manufacture, with all the different services that we provide, and just all the community events that we run and get involved with. So I'll give you a couple just to spark your interest that you can go look at on your own. We made a website called Component Studio where you can design your own components, your cards, your tiles, that sort of thing, all through a drag and drop interface. And you do it in a magic way, in that you basically will design a single card or a single tile, that sort of thing, and then upload a spreadsheet to the site, and it will automatically design the next 100 for you. So that's one cool thing. We have a service called Laboratory where you can literally design anything. We've designed literally 6-foot tall miniatures for, so people could do oversized board games at their convention. So we run all kinds of like social events. We'll buy you some food if you come to social events with us at Gen Con, for example. There all kinds of things. We'll sponsor you. We'll pay you to go to conventions and market yourself and us at the same time. So like that's called our designer table sponsorship. There's just so many things that we do, and we'd love to get to know you better and have you involved in our community.
All right. Well, that sounds wonderful. And I am so excited to hopefully talk to you again, JT, about more things and dive into even more of what the Game Crafter can do in a future episode. So, give people a break
would
right
love to
now,
be
I
on
guess.
again.
Yes. We would love to have you on here again. And I definitely want to check out The Captain is Dead too. So
Awesome. Maybe we can take a deep dive into some subject together. So on our next
yes, definitely. Let me know what you would like to talk about, or listeners, send in any suggestions that you would like us to discuss. There's a topic you would like us to do a deep dive on too. So
yeah, that's better, because then we know at least one person out there wants to hear about it.
yes. So if you want to hear about something, message us. All right. And with that, I'm just going to say thank you, JT, very much for joining us today. And I loved hearing about the Game Crafter, and we will talk again soon. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And we're back. And we have been joined by Keith from Thunderworks Games. How's it going?
Good to be here.
And it's excellent to have another repeat publisher and designer on the show. So, Keith, we're here to talk about Goblin Vault. So why don't you give us a rundown? What is this game you've got coming out? How do we get it? And why is it awesome?
Yeah, so Goblin Vaults is a 1 to 5 player, 30 to 45 minute card game. It comes in a smaller size box, similar to Cartographers, and it's a $25 product. It is, at its core, it's a kind of a traditional card game in terms you've got suited cards with numbers. There's 6 different suits, and it goes from 1 to 10. You are building a vault in front of you, so you're building a tableau of 4 columns and up to 3 cards in each one. Each turn, you are using the cards in your hand to bid for the cards that are on offer each turn, and then you're trying to figure out what the best position that card should be in. You're looking for certain cards that are associated with your faction, which are going to get you points. And then there's 3 scoring cards in play that are going to score different every time. So there's 1 card for each suit, and they're all double-sided, and you're going to play with 3 at a time. So you're basically bidding for cards. You're trying to maneuver and get the right cards for your vault and deny other people the cards that they need. Yeah, and it's a real kind of thinky. I think it's more thinky than people expect by the size of the box, and it's a good time with lots of replayability. Comes out. We're going to start pre-sales for it on the Thunderworks website February 1st. So as soon as that order comes in, we're going to ship you the game, and it's going to come with a free promo card. And then the game will hit retail on all your at your local game store and all the online game stores February 28th. So about a month later.
Nice. Can you tell us what the inspiration for this particular game is? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so this one's interesting. The name Goblin Vaults is actually mentioned in one of the adventures in Role Player Adventures. So it's in the Role Player universe. And in Role Player Adventures, you're walking around Kulbik Prison, and you run into different characters, and they're playing games. And one of them happens to be Goblin Vaults. And the idea was like, hey, it would be cool to make the game from the game. There's some other people that have done that, where there's a role playing game that has a playable game in it, and then they release the game separately. So that was kind of the inspiration. It created a framework for us to move forward on, but it also created a bunch of restrictions of if it's a game that people, goblins could potentially play in a fantasy prison, I don't think we can add lots of boards and a ton of pieces. So we needed to keep the scope, small. and so then also it's like, what you're going to have currency in this game, so you're going to be buying things or selling things or getting points, and what can we use to represent that? There's I assume that if I've never been a goblin in a fantasy prison before, but if I was, I don't think there'd be like piles of gold laying around. So one of the things that we did was that we used gears for the currency, which thematically represent like the construct guards. So these robots are the guards in the prison, and these are like kind of pieces of the guards that have been stolen or kind of found or extra pieces that they use to kind of use for trade in Kolbeck. So that's kind of the inspiration for that piece.
So Goblin Vaults, we just got a opportunity to play it as well, and I gotta say I absolutely enjoyed it. It's a very fun game, and you're absolutely right. It is more game in the box than I was expecting, but that doesn't surprise me from you. Since like every game that I've played that you've designed or had a hand in, it's been really remarkable how much game there is in. And we talked about, I think, right after the play or during the play, a little bit about had kind of that role player feel at the end with not having quite enough resources. Is that something that you're finding is kind of common as a mechanic or kind of theme into the way you're focused or designing games today? Or
I mean, I think that's just something I like. So at the beginning of the game, you have a hand of 10 cards, and your options feel very wide open. Like, think of all the things you can do, and then it's a matter of planning and a matter of like playing the right things at the right time. And as the game starts to come to a close, your options get narrower and narrower. So it kind of has this like kind of squeezing effect at the end of the game, and that's true in Role Player and also in this game. And I like, there's complexity to this game. In terms of I guess I think about layers. It's like, okay, you got this to think about, and you're gonna worry about that for your score. But then you've got this other element you got to think about, and there's this other element you have to think about, and that's true in this game where you're thinking about where you want to place the card. You're thinking about like what faction icons you want. You're thinking about the 3 scoring cards and which cards that are on offer are going to help you meet those goals the best. So there's kind of multiple things you're thinking about, and I think there's a nice parallel there too when you're selecting a die on Role Player. You're thinking about, okay, what color do I want? What number do I want? What position in purchase order do I want to be in? And where am I going to place it? Because what action do I want to take? So it's like in that decision, there's multiple layers, and that's also true in Goblin Vaults, where you're deciding which one of these 3 cards you want to bid on, or you want to try to underbid somebody to get the card that's in your hand into your vault. So there's multiple layers of things you're thinking about, so it makes the decisions kind of more complex than what I would, a light game or something like that.
I'm curious about the mechanics too. Is there anything from the theme of it, where it's goblins playing a card game in a prison, that came into the mechanics or that inspired the mechanics? I mean, there's a warden card,
right,
that factors in, but is there other stuff in terms of how the game is?
I mean, the warden card is basically the card that determines the trump suit. It also opens up an opportunity to take some special actions. If you match an icon that's on the warden card, you can move a card in your vault, or you can kind of dump a card and grab a new one. So there's definitely the Warden Mercy in Kolbeck Prison is kind of a main character in Role Player, mainly in Lockup. And then that character actually appears in the Lockup expansion as well, and is also in Role Player Adventures. So I think about Kolbeck Prison, and I think about like, okay, who are some who are the people in this place that people might have some experience with, and we can continue to kind of highlight. I think having suits with numbers, numbered suits as a traditional card game, that's not something that I've ever done in any of my games before, and that's kind of a traditional card game kind of thing. And I feel like those are the kind of games that someone who doesn't have access to a local game store buying the latest designer game might create a game with. So that was where some of the inspiration was from, but I would say at the end of the day, it's like mechanics first. Like gameplay is, having a nice theme, having something that can help you learn the rules of the game because of the theme makes sense, and have like going into the world a little bit. I think that's a great thing. But if the gameplay is not there, if you're not having fun, if it's not mentally engaging, then I don't think it matters a whole lot. So definitely gameplay first. But I think the art on the game turned out really well. We made an effort to try to make the cards look weathered, make them like not look like they came out of a standard card pack.
Yeah, right.
They're supposed to look kind of beat up, like that they've been heavily used and stuff as part of kind of the aesthetic of the game.
So one of the things that we noticed, and I think you mentioned it when we talked to you last time, was that all of your games have a solo player mechanic. And this one is no exception. Why is solo play so important, and how do you make solo play work in a game where you're bidding for cards?
Yeah, it's most bidding games don't have most bidding games don't play down to 2 players or even 1 player. So it was definitely a challenge. The dedication to the solo player started early on. My first game on Kickstarter was a game called Bullfrogs, which we talked about earlier. And, there was a demand in the comments for a solo game, or I don't remember exactly, but I definitely came up with an idea and I added it as an add-on with the idea of maybe people like solo games. And it was overwhelmingly popular. I think a solid, at least 30% of the people that pledged to the game also added an $8 solo mode, which was kind of eye-opening. So I think solo board gaming has exploded since then, and I felt like I was kind of on the beginning of the wave on that a little bit. And when Role Player was on Kickstarter, kind of the second big game that I did on Kickstarter, there was a lot of people asking for a solo mode. So I designed one. So, and then it became a thing. I designed a lot of solo modes for Eduardo Baraf over at Pencil First Games on his Herbaceous line. And it's just been kind of we've supported the solo players. The biggest guild on Board Game Geek is the Solo Players Guild. So there's a lot of people that like to play solo modes. So it seems like a missed opportunity if you don't have a solo mode in your game. And this one in particular was a challenge, but it has creating something that's easy to administer, that you don't spend the entire game messing with the AI the whole time, but that also emulates a multiplayer game is kind of the goal. And we did that with kind of adding a dummy player that spits out kind of a random bid, and then the player bids, and then the dummy player puts out a second bid. So you're still trying to make sure you get the card that you want, because the AI could still outbid you if they want. And then I really enjoyed using that system in the solo mode. So then I actually added it to a variant of that to the 2-player game, where there's a third AI character that's also bidding, kind of gumming up the works and making sure that not everybody gets every single card that they want. So at this point, every single Thunderworks title has a solo mode, and I don't see that changing.
No, that's awesome. I don't think Justin or I are solo players at all. Maybe I shouldn't talk to you. I'm definitely not a solo player kind of guy.
Once in a while, I'll try.
I find it intriguing that a game like this can have a good solo player component to it, and it sounds like you put a lot of thought into that.
And I think even players that, like you said, that don't play a lot of solo, I think when they see a game that plays down to solo, they see as an added value to their game, that if I ever decided to play solo mode, it was available. And then some people will play solo modes for games just to learn the core mechanics before they get together with their buddies and play a multiplayer game. So, yes, I honestly don't see why all games don't have solo modes. I mean, definitely takes some design work, and usually there's a component or two that's added to make the solo mode work. But I think you're going to see more and more. That's going to be more and more common as we move forward.
I think there's some great insights there. I did not realize that on Board Game Geek, the biggest guild is the solo play guild.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
That is really actually. I mean, I personally, it's not something I look into, but that's definitely something we'll need to pay attention to more.
It's funny though, when you said, even as a non-solo gamer, I've tried a little once in a while solo gaming, but I do actually think about it when I'm looking at a game to buy, that, hey, this also does solo. I could do that if I want. It totally factors into how I think about it. You're absolutely right about that.
And another thing that we do here at Thunderworks Games, another thing we do is there's some community supported or some community run kind of monthly challenges on Board Game Geek. So if you play solo games and you're interested in playing some Thunderworks titles, every month we put up kind of a role player challenge where we say, hey, everybody's going to play this character board. They're going to use this class, et cetera, and then everybody posts the results, and then at the end of the month, then Thunderworks, aka me, I send a prize out to the randomly get drawn. Their name gets drawn if they participate, and I send them, promo items or whatever for the game. And we also do one for cartographers every month as well. So if you're interested in getting some free stuff from Thunderworks and want to play some of our games more often, I would try to find those, and you can partake in the challenges every month and be up to win some cool stuff.
That's really cool. That's exciting to be like. It reminds me of like those daily or weekly challenges you'll see on video games and stuff. Like, it seems right. That's a really cool idea.
It's a great way to stay involved and engage with the community and the people that are playing. So, what else? I mean, have we talked about everything we need to talk about with Goblin Vaults? Is there anything else we need the people to know about this? I mean, I think if you're having an opportunity to look for a game like this was a lot of fun. I actually liked it. It really, from a form factor, the box is a beautiful box, but it's bigger than what the game needs to be. So you can easily slip this into, say, a plastic baggie, take it with you anywhere you want to go. You want to go to the pub, you're going on vacation, you want to play it with wherever. This game will work. And that is I think that's been a big plus for Suzanne and I in particular. We've really been finding games that have a lot of complexity and are able to be traveled with. It's very important to us as we look at traveling and doing those kind of things more often. I'm very excited to get a copy of this and be able to do that and bring it. But anything else we wanted to touch on or cover with Goblin Vaults?
I don't think so. Obviously, we're going to start. People can start getting their copies in the next week or so, and a lot of the early feedback have been really positive. Excited to see it in people's hands, and it's this title, because this for its size, it took the longest to get across the finish line. So it's fun to finally see it coming out after kind of going through a lot of redesign and additional work on it. So it's the first of 3 releases for Thunderworks this year, and we're excited to see it come out.
So to transition there, what else can we get excited for? What's coming in the future for Thunderworks?
Yeah, so right now we're trying to do about 3 games a year. So Goblin Vaults is our first. And then we ran 2 Kickstarters at the end of the year last year, one for Dawn of Ulos, and the second for the new expansion for Role Player Adventures called Golpax: A Secret. Dawn of Ulos is in manufacturing, and it's going to be on its way very soon. So backers should start getting that in July, and then it'll be a Gen Con release at the beginning of August to retail. And then after that, obviously we'll have the Role Player Adventures expansion coming out in November. That also includes a reprint of the base game and a reprint of the first expansion. That is a big project, and there's lots of there's a lot of trees getting cut down to make that game. But there's a lot of paper in that game, and it's heavy, and it's hard to transport it around the globe. So that one's complicated, and that one's going to be going into print very, very soon. And then we have a couple crowdfunding campaigns coming. So we currently are targeting April for a game called Metro Runner, which I may have mentioned in the past, which is it's a 90-minute 1 to 5 player. It's kind of I would say it's got a hacking element to it. So it has this central puzzle in which you're manipulating these tiles to flip them and slide them around, similar to it has a little bit of a Forbidden Desert element to it, where the tiles are getting slid around and getting flipped over and stuff. And then you're moving your character around the metro in the city, doing jobs for different corporations. You're trying to increase your runner's notoriety. You're trying to finish jobs for different corporations to level up your character to give them more powers and make them more efficient doing jobs and doing hacks and stuff. So
sounds like that might be kind of a cyberpunk vibe.
It's 100% a cyberpunk vibe.
Yeah, nice.
And the artwork on it, I think, is pretty amazing. But anyway, I'm a little biased. So my Metro Runner is coming to crowdfunding Kickstarter likely in April. And then we have another role-player world game coming from the designer of cartographers. His name is Jordi Adan. And there's a title called Stone Spine Architects, which is a drafting dungeon building game.
Interesting.
So it's like yeah, it has a little bit of like Sushi Go, where you play a card, pass a card kind of thing, but it definitely has layers of complexity similar to Goblin Vaults that something like Sushi Go kind of doesn't have. Sushi Go is a much lighter game, but that core mechanic is similar, and I think that's all we're talking about right now. So we've got all our plans in place for the next 2-3 years. And right now we're focusing on the 3 that are coming to market: Goblin Vaults, Dawn of Ulos, and Gulpax the Secret, and then 2 crowdfunding campaigns for Metro Runner and Stone Spine Architects.
Well, I'll say I backed all of them last year, and I will back all of them again this year because I absolutely there's nothing wrong with any of these games ever. Top-notch components, top-notch quality, and the games are absolutely a blast to play. So I strongly recommend that you pay attention to Thunderworks games here in the future to make sure that you're aware of when all of these things hit crowdfunding. And, of course, we here at Wisco Dice will let you know as well because we're huge fans.
Much appreciated. Yeah.
And then for Goblin Vaults, just to touch back, you'll be able to get Goblin Vaults in retail when?
So Goblin Vaults is a straight-to-retail title. We try to do 2 to 3... We're doing 2 Kickstarters a year, maybe 3 sometimes. But the thing about Kickstarter and crowdfunding is that they don't always they don't let you kind of do as many as you want, right? They kind of restrict you to some degree of how many you can have simultaneously outstanding. That's for a good reason. There are some bad players, some bad actors on Kickstarter that have made life not as good for the real kind of honest and up guys. So, and this title it's a small enough form factor, right? It's the size of cartographers. And so I said, well, let's just go to retail on this one, and then we can kind of save our Kickstarter slots for the bigger games like Dawn of Ulos and the Role Player Adventures pieces. So traditionally, I would say most of the titles that Thunderworks publishes are on Kickstarter, but we have had some straight to retail. Goblin Vaults is the latest. Cape May and 10 Penny Parks, and the original Cartographers actually was not on Kickstarter. We ended up coming back to Kickstarter with the Heroes expansion for the first time on that product. So, there's a lot of differences in kind of the style of how you release a game on retail via retail versus Kickstarter. And as from a working, I would rather honestly release games via retail. Mainly because there's the big advantage to that is that you can put all your marketing dollars, all your sending out all the final copies, that can all happen at release. So the moments in which people are most excited about the game is when it's available for them to go to the store and buy, versus running a Kickstarter campaign. You spend a lot of effort and a lot of money marketing the campaign, and then there's a lot of excitement when people are pledging their money, and that's cool. And then 6 to 9 months later, when the game comes out, you're kind of moved on to the next thing, and you're investing in new things. It basically then, when it comes out to retail, it doesn't particularly do as well usually. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But that's the thought on it. Is that basically a Kickstarter project? If you have to market it twice. You have to market it during the Kickstarter, and you have to market it when it's released. Yeah, so that's the deal with Goblin Vaults, straight to retail. We didn't talk about it a lot beforehand, and then I was like, hey, we've got this new thing. It's about to come out. Check this out, guys, which is kind of the technique that we've been using on this title.
We're very excited to be able to get our hands on a copy of Goblin Vaults, and make sure that you get, if you're out there and you're listening to this, that you get your pre-order, because it sounds like that promo card is going to be awesome as well. And you're definitely going to want your copy to have it. And so, of course, Keith will appreciate your pre-order as well. So,
yeah.
We'll have links in the show notes for where you can find out more information about Goblin Vaults. And like I said, stay tuned to Wisco Dice and Thunderworks Games for more information about all these releases. Keith, we so much appreciate the time. But before we wrap this up, did you have anything else that you wanted to let the audience know?
Nothing off the top of my head. Just stay tuned here at Wisco Dice and find out the latest about Thunderworks Games.
All right. So thanks, everybody, for taking the time. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you leave a review of this show wherever your favorite place is to find podcasts. Oh, and by the way, give us a like on our Facebook page. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or Pinterest while you're at it. If you haven't looked recently, make sure you catch up on the blog at wiscodice.com. Hey, Brian, what's that site?
Ah, darn, I forget. Justin, what's our website again?
Wiscodice.com.
That's right, it's wiscodice.com. And until next time, everyone, peace out.